This is my end. Those were the Admiral's exact words, the moment he realized the trap had closed around him. He thought he was alone in my office. He thought no one would ever know he tampered with my classified mission files. He thought he could erase my career with one illegal edit and walk away clean. But he didn't know something deadly simple. Special Forces had set the trap hours before he even touched my laptop. Before I show you how the wall screens lit up, how the Special Forces alert system snapped into action, and how a decorated SEAL Admiral walked into the one surveillance ambush he could never escape. Please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and comment where you're watching from. This story isn't just betrayal. It's a federal-level takedown. You want to know what real betrayal feels like? Let me paint you a picture that still keeps me awake at night, still makes my blood boil every time I think about it. Because what happened in that office wasn't just an attack on me, it was an attack on everything we swore to protect, everything we bled for, everything that separates us from the animals we hunt in the darkness. My name doesn't matter. My rank doesn't matter. What matters is that for over 10 years, I've carried a top-secret clearance under Naval Special Warfare Command. I've briefed admirals, generals, and people whose names you'll never know because their very existence is classified. I've walked into rooms where the wrong word could start wars, where the right intelligence could save thousands of lives, where the weight of national security rests on your shoulders like a lead blanket that never comes off. 10 years of proving myself. 10 years of perfect service records. 10 years of missions I can never talk about, in places I can never name, doing things that would make your worst nightmares look like children's bedtime stories. I've earned my place at that table, earned the right to handle intelligence so sensitive that even thinking about it wrong could destroy careers, end lives, topple governments. But here's what they don't tell you about the military. The greatest threats don't always come from enemy nations or terrorist cells. Sometimes, the most dangerous predator is the one sitting across from you in the briefing room, wearing the same uniform, claiming to fight for the same flag. Admiral Richardson. And yes, I'm using his real name because after what he did, he deserves to have his shame follow him into whatever hole he crawled into had been watching me for months. Not with the proud eye of a mentor seeing a promising officer rise through the ranks. No. This was something darker, something that twisted in his gut every time my name appeared on a commendation, every time I was chosen for a high-value assignment, every time someone whispered that I might be promotion material. You have to understand the hierarchy here. In the Navy, an admiral isn't just a superior officer, he's a god. When an admiral walks into a room, conversations stop. When an admiral speaks, you listen. When an admiral gives you an order, you don't question it, you don't hesitate, you execute with absolute precision. The gap between my rank and his wasn't just organizational, it was a chasm that could swallow careers whole. And Richardson knew it. He knew that power, fed off it, weaponized it every chance he got. I'd watch him in meetings, the way his eyes would narrow when I presented intelligence that contradicted his assumptions, the way his jaw would tighten when other officers praised my analysis. The man was eaten alive by jealousy, consumed by the thought that someone below him might actually be better at the job than he was. The backhanded compliments started small. Good work on the Kabul intel, though I would have approached it differently. Impressive analysis, but you missed the political implications. Nice job, but next time let's make sure we consider all angles. Each comment delivered with a smile that never reached his eyes, each word carefully chosen to plant seeds of doubt, to make me second-guess myself, to remind everyone in the room that he was the admiral and I was just another officer who needed guidance. But it got worse. So much worse. The subtle threats came next. Comments about how quickly careers could change course, how one bad evaluation could derail years of progress, how even the most promising officers sometimes found themselves reassigned to desk jobs in places where their talents would be wasted. He'd lean in close when he said these things, his voice dropping to a whisper that only I could hear, his breath hot against my ear like a predator marking his territory. And his eyes. God, his eyes. Every time I pulled out a classified file, every time I accessed my secure terminal, every time I opened a folder marked with classification levels that made grown men nervous, he would watch. Not the casual glance of a superior checking on a subordinate's work, but the hungry stare of someone planning something. His gaze would linger on my screen, memorizing passwords, studying security protocols, mapping out my digital footprint like a burglar casing a house. I should have seen it coming. Should have recognized the signs. But when you're drowning in operational tempo, when you're juggling multiple classified projects, when you're trying to stay ahead of threats that evolve by the hour, you don't always have the luxury of watching your six for internal enemies. The file that changed everything arrived on a Tuesday morning that started like any other. Encrypted data packet, highest classification level, direct from Naval Special Warfare Task Group. The kind of intelligence that makes your security clearance feel like a privilege and a burden all at once. Inside that file was gold. Live intelligence on active special operations missions. Personnel rosters with real names of operators currently deployed in hostile territory. Extraction routes that could mean the difference between life and death for our people in the field. Communication frequencies that enemy forces would kill to intercept. Safe house locations that had taken years to establish and could be blown with a single leak. This wasn't just paperwork. This wasn't just data. This was the lifeblood of operations that were happening in real time, thousands of miles away, where American operators were counting on the security of this information to make it home alive. Every name in that file represented someone's son, someone's father, someone's husband who trusted that their location would remain secret, their identity protected, their mission secure. And tampering with it? Altering even a single character of that intelligence? That wasn't just a career-ending move. It was a federal crime that could result in treason charges, life in prison, or in some cases, execution. Because when you compromise operational security at that level, when you put American lives at risk for personal gain, you cross a line that our legal system takes very, very seriously. But Richardson was past caring about consequences. His obsession with destroying me had overridden every principle he'd sworn to uphold, every oath he'd taken, every shred of honor he'd once possessed. The man who had once been trusted with the most sensitive intelligence our nation produces had become a threat to national security itself. I remember that day with perfect clarity because it was the day my world exploded. I'd been reviewing the classified files all morning, cross-referencing intelligence reports, preparing briefings for operational commanders who needed real-time updates on their teams in the field. The weight of responsibility was crushing. Knowing that a single mistake, a single misinterpretation, could cost lives. At 1,347 hours, I received an urgent message. 6 minutes. That's all I needed to be away from my workstation. 6 minutes to handle what should have been a routine administrative matter. 6 minutes that would change everything. When you work with classified material, leaving your workstation secured is religion. You lock your screen, you secure your files, you follow protocols that have been drilled into your head until they become muscle memory. But there are levels of security and, sometimes, for trusted personnel in controlled environments, those protocols can be relaxed just enough to allow for quick administrative tasks. Richardson knew this. He'd been watching, learning, waiting for exactly this kind of opportunity. I was walking back to my office, my mind already shifting back to the intelligence briefing I needed to complete when I felt it. That prickling sensation on the back of your neck that every combat veteran knows. The invisible alarm that screams danger when everything appears normal. Something was wrong. Terribly, fundamentally wrong. The door to my office was exactly as I'd left it. The hallway was empty. The security lights showed green across the board. But when you've spent years in environments where attention to detail means survival, you notice things that others miss. My chair had been moved. Just slightly, barely perceptible, but enough that the angle was different from when I'd left. A file folder that had been perfectly aligned with the edge of my desk was now off by perhaps half an inch. And my computer screen, the cursor was blinking in the wrong location, in a document I hadn't been accessing when I left. My blood turned to ice. I approached my workstation like I was defusing a bomb, every step calculated, every sense hyper-alert. My hands trembled as I checked my access logs, searched for any sign of unauthorized entry, any evidence that someone had been where they shouldn't have been. And then I saw him. Admiral Richardson was standing in the corner of my office, partially hidden by a filing cabinet, his hands still on my keyboard, his eyes locked on my monitor. The classified file, the one containing live operational intelligence, was open on my screen. And he was editing it. His fingers moved with practiced precision, deleting lines of text, altering coordinates, changing communication frequencies. Each keystroke was a potential death sentence for American operators in the field. Each modification was a federal crime that carried penalties measured in decades of imprisonment. "I'll make sure you leave this base," he whispered, his voice dripping with venom. "A little alteration and your career is gone." The words hit me like physical blows. This wasn't just about jealousy anymore. This wasn't just about professional rivalry or hurt feelings. This was about a man so consumed with hatred that he was willing to commit treason, willing to risk American lives, willing to compromise national security just to destroy me. He continued typing, his movements growing more confident as he believed himself unobserved. Another line deleted. Another coordinate changed. Another frequency altered. Each keystroke was a betrayal not just of me, but of every operator whose life depended on the accuracy of that intelligence. But Richardson didn't know something. Something that would transform this moment from a devastating attack on my career into his own destruction. Earlier that morning, I had received specific orders from Joint Special Operations Command. Intelligence suggested potential insider threats, possible attempts to compromise sensitive operational data. My workstation had been selected for enhanced monitoring, a silent, invisible surveillance system designed to catch exactly what Richardson was doing. The moment his unauthorized hands touched my keyboard, the trap activated. Hidden cameras began recording from multiple angles. Audio pickups captured every word, every breath, every whispered threat. Network monitoring systems logged every keystroke, every file access, every illegal modification. And most importantly, a silent alert went out to Special Forces tactical inspection units stationed throughout the base. Richardson had no idea that his every move was being watched, recorded, and transmitted in real time to a response team that was already mobilizing to intercept him. I watched in frozen horror as he continued his work, each keystroke a nail in his own coffin. The man who thought he was destroying my career was actually providing law enforcement with a perfect, undeniable record of federal crimes being committed in real time. And then it happened. The wall screens in my office exploded to life. 3 different camera angles showing Richardson hunched over my computer. Crystal clear audio of his threats. Digital timestamps proving unauthorized access. Network logs showing exactly which files he had accessed and how he had modified them. The evidence was overwhelming, undeniable, and absolutely devastating. Richardson's face went white as he realized what was happening. His hands froze over the keyboard. His mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. And then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he spoke the words that would haunt him for the rest of his life. This is my end. The man who had spent months planning my destruction realized in that moment that he had walked into a trap so perfect, so complete, that there was no escape. Every crime he had committed was recorded. Every threat he had made was captured. Every illegal keystroke was logged and time-stamped. The sound of boots in the hallway came next. Heavy, purposeful footsteps that grew louder with each passing second. Richardson's eyes darted toward the door, then back to the screens still displaying his crimes, then to me standing in the doorway like a witness to his own destruction. His phone started buzzing. My phone started buzzing. Phones throughout the building started buzzing as the alert system activated and response teams coordinated their approach. Special Forces Tactical Inspection Unit didn't knock. They didn't announce themselves. They simply breached the door with the kind of precision and overwhelming force that leaves no room for resistance or escape. 6 operators in full tactical gear flooded into my office, their movements coordinated like a machine designed for exactly this purpose. Richardson, who had spent his career commanding others, found himself face to face with the elite forces he had once believed were under his authority. Admiral Richardson, the team leader's voice was cold, professional, final. You are being detained for violation of the Espionage Act, unauthorized access to classified materials, tampering with operational intelligence, and attempted sabotage of special operations missions. Each charge hit him like a physical blow. I watched as the weight of his crimes settled on his shoulders, watched as the reality of federal prosecution replaced his delusions of untouchable authority. Unauthorized access to classified systems, federal crime. Tampering with operational intelligence while American forces are deployed, federal crime. Attempting to compromise mission-critical data, federal crime. Using your position of authority to commit acts of sabotage, federal crime. The charges kept coming, each one carrying penalties that would effectively end his life as he knew it. This wasn't a military disciplinary matter that could be handled quietly or swept under administrative rugs. This was federal prosecution territory, where admirals receive the same treatment as any other traitor who compromises American security. Richardson collapsed into the same chair he had threatened me from just minutes earlier. The symbol of authority he had wielded like a weapon became the seat of his own defeat. His hands shook as the full magnitude of his situation settled over him like a burial shroud. They escorted me to a separate facility for formal debriefing. The process was thorough, professional, and absolutely critical to ensuring that every aspect of the incident was properly documented. Special investigators needed my statement, my perspective, my technical knowledge of what Richardson had accessed and how his modifications could have impacted ongoing operations. I provided them with everything. Access logs that showed the exact time of Richardson's unauthorized entry. Network monitoring data that tracked every keystroke he made. File comparison analysis that revealed precisely which intelligence he had altered and how those changes could have affected operations in the field. The investigators confirmed what I already knew. Every moment of Richardson's criminal activity had been captured and preserved. The surveillance system hadn't just caught him in the act, it had created an unbreakable chain of evidence that would withstand the most aggressive legal challenges. I didn't destroy Admiral Richardson. His own actions did. His own choices led him into that office, guided his hands to my keyboard, formed the threats that sealed his fate. All I did was follow orders, implement security protocols, and provide honest testimony about what I witnessed. But watching a man destroy himself doesn't feel like victory. It feels like witnessing a tragedy that could have been prevented if pride and jealousy hadn't poisoned a career built over decades of service. The Naval Criminal Investigative Service opened their case within hours. Richardson's entire chain of command was alerted to potential security breaches. His security clearance was immediately revoked, his access to classified systems terminated, his movements restricted pending a full investigation. The man who had threatened to end my career found himself facing court-martial proceedings that could result in life imprisonment. The charges weren't just administrative. They were criminal, federal, and carried penalties that reflected the seriousness of compromising national security during active military operations. He begged. God help me, I watched a decorated admiral beg for mercy that wasn't mine to give. He pleaded with investigators, promised cooperation, offered information about other potential security vulnerabilities. But federal prosecutors don't negotiate with traitors, especially when the evidence is so overwhelming that conviction is virtually guaranteed. The surveillance recordings became his worst nightmare. Every threat he had whispered in my ear was played back in interrogation rooms. Every illegal keystroke was analyzed by technical experts. Every moment of his criminal activity was dissected by legal professionals who specialized in espionage cases. The man who tried to erase my future had accidentally erased his own, and the irony wasn't lost on anyone involved in the investigation. Fellow SEALs approached me quietly in the days that followed. Not to congratulate me, but to thank me for exposing corruption that had been festering at the highest levels of command. Richardson's downfall opened doors to investigations of other misconduct that had been buried under his authority. Years of questionable decisions were suddenly subject to scrutiny. Personnel actions that had seemed arbitrary were revealed to be retaliatory. Security protocols that had been relaxed for his convenience were recognized as dangerous vulnerabilities. I became a liaison to the Special Forces Security Task Group responsible for preventing internal integrity breaches. The experience of watching a trusted leader become a security threat gave me insights that proved valuable in developing protocols to identify and neutralize similar risks. But the most important lesson wasn't about security systems or surveillance technology. It was about the human capacity for self-destruction, the way pride and jealousy can transform dedicated servants into enemies of the very cause they once served. Sometimes the most dangerous enemy is the one wearing your same uniform, carrying the same identification, swearing allegiance to the same flag. The enemy who knows your procedures, understands your weaknesses, has access to your most sensitive information. Richardson had been that enemy. A cancer growing within our own ranks, using his position and authority to undermine the very missions he was supposed to support. His betrayal wasn't just personal. It was institutional, systemic, a violation of every principle that separates professional military service from criminal enterprise. Heroes don't always die on missions. Some destroy themselves in silence, their careers ending not in glory but in handcuffs, their legacies measured not in victories, but in the damage they inflicted on their own forces. All I did was make sure the truth was seen. All I did was follow protocols designed to protect the integrity of classified systems. All I did was provide honest testimony about crimes I witnessed being committed against American national security. The final image that haunts me isn't Richardson being led away in restraints or sitting in a federal courthouse facing treason charges. It's his face the moment those wall screens lit up, the moment he realized that his carefully planned destruction of my career had become the instrument of his own downfall. The moment a decorated admiral looked at undeniable evidence of his own crimes and whispered, This is my end." Who do you think was in the wrong here? Me for following security protocols that caught a traitor in the act, or him for walking into a trap of his own making by choosing to compromise classified intelligence and risk American lives for personal revenge? Comment below. Make sure to like this video, subscribe, and don't miss the next story about what happens when honor and duty collide with the darkest aspects of human nature. Because in the shadows where classified operations unfold, where national security hangs in the balance, where the wrong decision can cost lives and compromise missions, the greatest battles aren't always fought against foreign enemies. Sometimes, the war is within our own ranks. Sometimes, the enemy is someone you trusted. Sometimes, justice comes not from bullets or bombs, but from the quiet activation of surveillance systems designed to catch wolves hiding among the sheep. Admiral Richardson learned that lesson the hard way, and his education cost him everything.